Good morning, JP.
Hey, good morning, Brandon.
I can't lie. Good afternoon, JP.
Good afternoon, Brandon.
I
For those
just can't
watching, it
lie.
is
We wanted to do this in the
1:27.
morning, and I got carried away with work, and here we are. Good afternoon,
Yeah,
JP.
that's all right.
Good to see you.
Good afternoon, Brandon.
Uh,
Happy Wednesday.
yes. So we're starting in a new initiative, which is each month we're focusing on a theme. This month, June, is balance. We're slow rolling it, but we're doing a letter on balance. We're doing a video on balance, and we're just going to keep building upon this theme. And so our video today is about balance. It's about how balance impacts our investment work, because we do beyond just investment work. And it is unscripted. We really have not planned this conversation.
Right. Well, we planned a little bit of it. We have some things to show, but yeah, I think the conversation is about taking the topic, like you said, of balance, and then bring it to portfolio management, which is the most technical part
You
of our
showed
job.
me a graphic and said, "Hey, we can show this," and I said, "Great." That's the extent of our
Right. That's
planning
good.
on this conversation. So I'll kick us off. To me, what's the most important thing about balance, or I think the most intriguing thing about balance, is that that's our principal job as investment managers, is to balance. And what we balance is growth and income, which is we balance the present moment versus the future moment. What we can guarantee in quotes, because we can never guarantee anything, which is income, and what we're hoping for.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. The whole idea behind a balanced portfolio really dates back to the 80s, where a lot of the research started to take place behind like the mathematical piece of investing, which is like, how do we balance standard deviation or returns? And like, that's all great. But really what it comes down to is, people are only comfortable taking so much risk when they're putting their money to work, right? You work so hard, you take your money, you put it in the market. And then as investment managers, we have to understand that.
I thought you were going to mention our friend Dr. Markowitz.
Oh yeah, no, I mean the Markowitz model, efficient frontiers, going back to all of that.
The modern portfolio theory.
Modern portfolio theory.
Yeah.
Right.
And
that's all there.
His unintended baby.
Which is the 60-40 portfolio.
Yeah.
Is basically the benchmark for a balanced portfolio. And has been since it was first put on paper. And what's funny is that he really didn't even say this is a good portfolio. In fact, when the 60-40 came around, it was just a hypothetical of saying like, hey, if we decided to just hold 60% of a portfolio in the stock market, 40% in the fixed income market, here's kind of what that looks like versus those two benchmarks, right? Yeah. At no point was he ever like, this is the way everyone should invest, but it's kind of become the gold standard as far as an allocation for most people.
So we're geeking out on some terminology. So let's slow it. I'm going to slow it down a bit and explain some things for Stacy, as my good friends at Smartless say, and say that a 60-40 portfolio is 60% in equities, in stock, and 40% in bonds, 60% in future growth, big picture, and 40% in income or current growth or current cash flow. And so the modern portfolio theory did show that there was this ideal mix, and then for many between equities and stocks and bonds, and that you could kind of just set it there and forget it. And then the grandchild of that was, hey, for every year of your age, you should have that percentage in bonds. Right. I don't know if you've heard that, but so once in a while we get somebody say that, like, shouldn't I? And it's like, no, because that would work in a normalized, stable Federal Reserve environment. But now the Fed's gone rogue, or at least has got very active. We'll go active. I think I prefer active than rogue, but they're definitely very active. And these like beliefs or these fixed things like 60-40 or have as many bonds as the years that you are no longer makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it also all depends on like timing, right? So you may say, oh, well, I'm 50 years old, so I need 50% in bonds. Well, you can say that when it's the middle of a recession, but if that means we're about to kick off, like if it's 2009 and we're about to have a 13-year long bull market, you really missed out on that, right? And so you kind of have to think longer term than just setting a simple rule and sticking to it. Like it can really backfire on you.
Not to mention, not everybody retires at 65.
Exactly.
And and like demographically, it doesn't matter. Yeah, demographically, these numbers don't make any sense at all. But the real point is that we are balancing these two things between growth and income. And it's not just based on your personal situation, when you're going to retire or when you need the money or how much risk you want to take, as you spoke to, but it also talks about what the Fed is doing. And if you really geek out in our industry, everybody's saying, and they're writing these articles that they, some of them think it's like really groundbreaking or controversial. 60-40 portfolio is dead, like, and because 2022 last year was a really bad year for that portfolio because both stocks and bonds kind of got spanked.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly true. And I think this is a great time to pull up that chart you mentioned. So here we have asset classes. So we have things like if you were to buy all municipal bonds, or if you bought aggregate, which means just you bought the index.
Each of these colors is an asset class. Sorry, I just want to be really clear. So each of these colors are an asset class. Got it.
Yep. And they're all different returns. So this chart, this is actually from last year, which kind of the death of the 60-40 was really the hot topic, mid throes of the down market. And then you have things like a 1 month, 3 month, going all the way back to a 10-year annualized return, right? So kind of an average return year over year for 10 years. You can see that in the yellow, this is our 60-40 that we talked about, the Markowitz idea of a balanced fund. And, in about 10 years, it returned 6.9% on average over the long term. And you can see that if you compare that to just buying like the broad US market, the S&P 500, it was about, what is that, 6%, 7% underneath in returns. But what you were really trying to make sure you hedged against was a year-to-date return like this year, or 2022 in this case, where if you were just to hold that same S&P 500, you would have been down about 4.3, 4.2% compared to that portfolio. So the whole idea, like you mentioned, Brandon, is really not to juice your returns and try to go for the moon. It's limiting the downside.
That's what
along the way, that fixed income also provided you an income, right? So maybe you didn't buy all dividend companies to kind of give you that cash flow, but the bonds on the other side will mimic that cash flow.
Yeah. Again, to be clear, we're not advocating a 60-40 portfolio. We're not proponents of it. And one of the reasons, but it is a good illustration for if you want to ride just down the middle over the long run, that'll work. You can balance it out and it's a set formula. We try to we are more active on how the factors that we put into balancing these two things. But one of the real difficult things about our job now is we're supposed to be balancing apples and oranges. And with all the Fed's been doing lately, we're kind of balancing apples and apples oftentimes. And what I'm saying is that there's just a really high correlation between stocks and bonds. And so no matter how much we try to balance these two, they can both move in the same direction and sometimes near velocity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw in 2020 when you finished out the year, or 2022 we finished out the year, we saw that essentially bonds and the S&P 500, maybe the magnitude was different, right? Stocks are more risky than bonds, but they generally followed the same trend line down, and they moved almost the same too. So those historically, poorly correlated assets pretty much moved in tandem, just at different speeds. And that's a unique environment. That doesn't happen, or that hasn't happened over the last decade. So it's one of those things.
I would add a finer point to what you're saying. It has happened over the last decade, but then in particularly during moments of acute market crisis, and then the correlation snaps. So if we're the first week into COVID, everything's just getting hit hard. And they're all moving in the same direction. And then correlation snaps, and all of a sudden, people are looking for value in bonds. And so, but increasingly it's hard to find, with the Fed as active as they have been over the last 9 years, we're in the largest growth cycle probably in history, or at least recorded history. And when you have that correlation or these things, it's difficult to balance two things that are become increasingly similar.
Right. That's absolutely true. And now it's about being very particular about what you want to invest in, right? So there are, as you can see, there are many asset classes on here. And then below that, there are many more. So you can actually go as deep as you want to, if that was your prerogative, to try to find, okay, if I'm going to go fixed income, which of the fixed income asset classes will benefit me over the next, of these rolling returns, the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years for myself or my client. And the same thing on the equity side, right? There's different kinds of equities that you can invest in. What is the best way to do that? And this is kind of the time where being diligent about your investment process comes in handy, because when everything is correlated, it's all about what happens after the correlation snaps.
Yeah. And this is a conversation for another day, but I will mention it. A lot of the people who are saying 60-40 is dead are selling you something that isn't in the 60 and 40. Right? They're not saying go 70-30, go 80-20, go 50-50. They're saying buy my private equity, buy my venture capital, buy my gold, buy my gold, buy my gold. It's all that. It's not that. And so again, we always say trust your source, or not trust your source. Not trust your source. Question your source. And where does that fit in? But I don't know. It's really, I love the topic of balance in particular to investing. And when looking up balance, when I was doing just research for this month and thinking about it, like the opposite of balance was like getting knocked down, and I'm like, yeah, that's what we want. The opposite of getting knocked down. How do we do that? How do we give up on some of the upside for the sole purpose of not taking part of getting knocked down or the full downside?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to think about it. And portfolio management is just over the long term, making sure that you felt comfortable and you were reaching your goal, right? Because at the end of the day, if we can reach our personal goals and our client goals over time, then we did the right thing. Maybe, and like you said, sometimes we give up on growth, sometimes we don't, and you have really good years. But if we can really protect against the shocks, then you did your job, and you maintain that balance.
Yeah, I mean, there's another balance that comes to mind when you say that, and I think it's very wise, is the balance of caring what other people think, and the balance of not giving a darn what anybody else thinks, like, and just living your own life. And the same is with the portfolio too, like the balance of like, what should I be getting in this market based on what's out there? And then why do I care what everybody else is getting, or what these figment benchmarks are getting? And we talked about that in our letter that went out to our clients this month, which was these benchmarks are not real. Like no smart investor would go ahead and say, yeah, give me 75% small companies and then or like small positions and then 25% in 6 companies. This is not how you build a portfolio.
Right.
And our letter really
and if you told, if you had a list of 100 companies and I said, hey, these 10 are going to be going to the moon, why would you buy the other 90? But that's how benchmarks work, because they're trying to capture a breadth of a market. So if you have a
very
scenario,
nature they do. Yeah.
Right. And so if you have a scenario this year where maybe anywhere from 6 to 10 companies are really pulling up an entire index, even everything is kind of middling, somewhere in these, smaller long-term numbers, it's hard to compete against that, because even if you hold the index, it'll never be as good as if you just held it 6, right?
You just don't. Yeah. No. I mean, I bought all NVIDIA on January 1st. I just.
Oh, well, why are we
sold
even on
everything?
You're retired now?
I sold everything. I put all my eggs. I put my one egg in one basket. That was it. NVIDIA. I'm killing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Your next letter is going to announce your retirement.
That's a joke. Sorry. All right. So balance is our theme for this month. You're going to see it a lot. It's because we chose that as our first theme because that's what we do all the time. That's always what
Right.
we're thinking. So anything to add, JP?
No, I think that covers it. I think it's good. It's a good discussion, and it's something where, you know, we want to understand balance, and like you said, not only your portfolio, but also, you know, in people's lives as well. So if anyone ever feels like they're off balance in those things, it's always good to try to work on those things as well. It's not all about numbers and dollars.
Yeah, give us a call. Great. Good video.
All right. Talk to you later, Brandon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.